Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Carrow Road in the aftermath of a 2-1 defeat to Burnley here this afternoon. A rare feeling for Norwich City at home in 2024, a defeat, and obviously the second of the year after that Bristol City one. And probably, in truth, if you want a game to encapsulate where Norwich City find themselves at the moment under Johannes Torup, that was the 90 minutes and a game that would do just that in a nutshell, because it was a lot of it was good and positive, and there were encouraging signs. And then just around the margins, just around the key details, Norwich City have been caught lacking, and they have lost this game. And it probably epitomises why they are slap bang in the middle of the Championship, and perfectly and neatly defines, I think, what they've been so far this season. Let's run through the game then, because I think it's going to be one to cram in this. It's there's a lot to get through, but Norwich City made 3 changes from what was on Tuesday night, a real change in dynamic and in direction under the Dane. Obviously, with Ashley Barnes up front, again, a little bit more direct. They strayed away from that. Barnes didn't start. Cianats went up top. Oscar Schwartau was in on the right, and then Callum Fisher came in for Jack Stacey. And I thought, actually, in the first half, Norwich were excellent. Probably as good as I've seen them play in a little while in terms of build-up. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but Burnley came with a real intent to press and a real want to press, and Norwich City just controlled that a little bit because of their quality of possession. It was considered, it was controlled, and really the game was taking place in just that third of the pitch behind me just there, because Norwich had so much good stuff about them in terms of the way that they moved the ball, the overloads they created, some of the situations that they played out of. And then when they did break that first or second line of pressure, there was space to go and play in. There was opportunities to go and create overloads and to go and attack Burnley. And they probably just missed, I felt, on a few moments. I'm to be hypercritical about some of that build-up play in the first half. It was the opportunity they had where they shifted the ball from one side to the other to then go and play vertically and to go and play up the pitch. And there were a couple of times where both Schwartau and Sainz presented themselves and the ball wasn't forthcoming, and that probably meant that they got a little bit stuck. But you think about some of what Norwich have done in the weeks gone by, where it's been a little bit stodgy and they've tried to play out, and the patterns haven't been quite right, or the angles haven't been quite right. This wasn't that. This was a very considered, very controlled, very good Norwich City performance. And that is risk and reward, of course, because you invite a team onto you, particularly the way that Burnley press and the way that Burnley play. You make one pass that's wrong, they seize upon it, and they've got a chance to try and score towards your own goal. But the upside of that is you get through and you can create overloads and opportunities yourself. And we saw that in the first half. But Norwich took the lead inside the opening 30 seconds, in definitely the opening minute. It was a corner that was crossed in, really good. It was nice to see, I think, for all of the sort of discourse about Norwich City set pieces, there was a real strategy in terms of attacking corners. You saw it for the goal, really. You've got Doyle is there, and he acts as the blocker for Cordoba to almost occupy 3 players, hold them off, and that gives Cordoba a run to the front post where he's free, he's unmarked. If he can make contact and make decent contact and get it into the ground, he's got half an opportunity, and he does just that. And it's brilliant, selfless work from Doyle that creates that really good bit of set piece execution from Norwich City. Of course, the delivery has to be right and into the right area, and it was. And there was a moment in the first half as well where Duffy did similar, just hung off the back of a Norwich player and ran back post and nodded it across as well. So that created an opportunity. So it was good to see some better strength from attacking set pieces, and clearly something that Norwich City have been working on. But yeah, the pattern of the first half was pretty set. Norwich had control, probably really without constructing maybe the level of opportunities that they would like, and the level of opportunities that were needed to double that lead. But look, there's a reason why no Championship team so far this season has scored more than 1 against Burnley, because their defence is strong. They limit opportunities. They 1v1 are very good defensively. They don't sort of carve up the opportunities that would come usually with some regularity in Championship games. So Norwich did well to disrupt them and to unsettle them in that first period. And then you go in at half time and things change, and Burnley changed. They built up slightly differently. They were building up with a 3-2 in the first half, sort of shape and structure, which Norwich have done in the past. And they just changed that to a 3-1 type structure, and Norwich didn't really adapt to that. They put Josh Brown higher up the pitch. They got a lot more joy out of that. And for Norwich, then you have to make a decision, because do you then go 3-4-3 essentially and go match them? Because 1v1, you look at the players that both teams have, and I think respectively they're not the same quality. Burnley are a better side, so you're putting a lot of trust then in players to raise their levels and to up it. But Norwich didn't really adapt. I thought they came quite passive. They dropped quite deep and maybe lost some of what made the first half great, where you saw Doyle and Fisher inverting and creating a superiority in midfield that allowed other players to go higher up the pitch and Norwich to utilise some of that space basically between when the midfield press and the defensive line. There was a lot of space in that area in the first half, and in the second half there just wasn't that because Burnley suffocated the game a little more. They got players in good areas, and Norwich's pressing as well, respectively. And in the first half was excellent. And seeing that set energy, and Schwartau was effective, and the midfield did a good job winning the ball back in high areas, and they lost that intensity and whatnot in the second half. And that allowed Burnley to grow in the game and get a foothold. Norwich, of course, because of the game, were pretty happy and just saw that block dropping deeper and deeper, and actually it was doing okay. They weren't really carving up any sort of opportunity, Burnley massively, and you look at the way that they play generally this season. They've not been a side that are chance heavy. They don't create chances with a regularity that maybe other teams do towards the top end of the division. But look, when you've got players like Zian Fleming coming off the bench and the quality that they have in the ranks, that's why you have to be alert and concentrated for basically the whole 90 minutes because of the opportunities that those individuals can create through their talent. And that came essentially with what we saw with the equalising goal. There's a free kick in a position where Norwich set themselves for a cross, essentially. They switch off. There's a moment where they're not watching the ball, and it's taken quickly. Fleming can hit the ball out of his foot and blast one from 30 yards. Yes, the execution was good. Yes, the technique to lift that with pace and bend and dip to beat Angus Gunn all ends up was superb. But equally, there's no Norwich player within about 10 yards of him. They don't react. They don't respond. It's just not good enough from a Norwich City perspective. After all the work that you put into a game and after all the effort that they needed to be not just 1-0 ahead, but to be able to maintain that, to then throw it away because they've not switched on from a set piece, I think is really, really poor and basic, really. And then Burnley began to establish a bit more control, and it was just through basics, really. It was through winning second balls. It was about spells of possession. It was how they sort of played the game in Norwich's half, and Norwich probably lacked the pace to get up the pitch when those openings arrived. They weren't keeping the ball with the same quality that they were in the second half of the first half. Sorry, and this is where probably we see that where this Norwich City team is at the moment is inconsistent, and when there are those ebbs and flows in the game, that they're just not able or not in a position to react to them and be that with what they have on the pitch and the kind of mentality and what's between the ears. But equally, then from the bench, they have probably limited options, in my view, to significantly change a game in the same way that Burnley did. And you look at the second goal, really, and it's a mess. It comes from what should have been a Norwich City breakaway. Borja Sainz just tried to beat one player too many. Had options to the right. I think it was Stacey to the right, Hernandez to the left. Didn't use them. Tried to beat one player too many. Then break. Norwich don't have the numbers back. Kellen Fisher is sort of on the stretch trying to recover. He does and gets a header, and then Brownhill is allowed to swan in practically unmarked, and it's a good finish from a tight angle, but it's just really poor. Basically, from the moment Sainz gave the ball, their structure was evaporated. And it allowed Burnley to seize upon that. And in a game of so fine margins against a team who don't create a lot but don't give you a lot either, it kind of, it's frustrating because so much of this game was good. Norwich deserved probably at least a point this afternoon on the basis of their performance, and yet we're stood here talking about a Norwich defeat, and that is the frustration. And look, they had chances to equalise. There was a corner that there was a scramble. Slimani had a shot. Sainz had a shot saved from Trafford. There was a penalty peel at the end, which looked like a handball in real time, but I must confess I haven't seen that back yet. And then the big one was when the ball dropped to Emiliano Marcondes inside the 6-yard box. And I think it's one of those where he's just put too much power on it. He's tried to hit it with power across the goal, and actually maybe just didn't realise how close he was. And actually it was about placement and accuracy, because he's got a big portion of the goal to hit there. If he just has a slight look up and just finishes it more more guides it into that bottom corner rather than trying to fizz it in. It almost felt like he felt he had the ball in and around the penalty spot, and there was a sea of bodies, and he's hit it hard and hoping that it comes off someone or that it nestles in the bottom corner, but he's just put too much on it. And I mean, I've spoken to him after the game and sort of said he'll have a sleepless night over that, and I think he will. So, yeah, look, a really frustrating afternoon. Burnley are efficient. I didn't think they offered the same kind of quality or threat that Leeds or Sheffield United did, but good teams in the Championship are the ones that can put results together and that can come to places like this, and when they're 1-0 down can dig in. And we've seen plenty of Norwich teams who've been capable of that in the past. They've won this game through really Norwich City errors, and that's the frustration. And it's now 18 points for Norwich City from winning positions. you think about where that 18 points would put them if maybe their behaviour in certain games would have been slightly different. It would basically, we'd be talking about a team definitely in the top six, maybe even slightly higher than that. So that surmises beautifully for me where this Norwich City team is, where you've got a lot of players who, in moments, and the way I'd summarise the game is this: 0 to 45, I thought Norwich were really good. 45 to 75, I thought they were pretty impotent, but I thought they were fine and they were getting through it. 75 to 90, I thought was a real mess structurally, and you had players who had looked really calm and really consistent and really clear with what they were trying to do for the opening portion of the game. It just went out the window. There wasn't that same style or ability to grab a game, and again, it felt a little bit emotional. They felt quite emotional and quite rash and quite impulsive with some of their decision making. It wasn't always the best, and as soon as they lost that level of control on the game, it slipped away from them. And that is where the inconsistency is coming from, because when they are good, when they are winning games and they're creating good structures and they're playing the ball and they're confident and they're flowing, they're brilliant to watch. They play like a top team at this level. When there's adversity, when things don't go against them, when games slip away from them, it feels like it's really hard to hold and stop that momentum at this moment in time. And that is what creates this lurch, I think, in performances. It's a young group, first and foremost. You've got players there who probably are doing things they haven't ever done before in their career or is slightly new, and that's a big test and it takes time, and realistically you see which players can adapt to that and which players can't, and we can probably pick out 3, 4, 5 players who are taking to what Johannes Hoftorp wants them to do, compared to maybe 3 or 4 who aren't and are struggling, and there are players struggling to get up to that, and ultimately the solution is time and transfer windows and evolution. And the problem is when you rip off what has been Norwich, I think for the last 2 years have been basically operated as a bit sticking plaster, a bit, win the next game, don't worry about the one after that. And so when you pull that off and you've got this big gaping wound and, there's like, there's bugs crawling out of it, and, you've got to fix certain things and you've got to change certain things and you've got to patch things up, and, there can be infections along the way. And, maybe I'm stretching this analogy now, but you get the point. You have to accept that in the short term there's going to be a bit of pain and there's going to be a bit of flux within that. And so I think it's difficult because so much of the way that we analyse football in this country is through a league table, and it's through a league table that for the majority of the season isn't formed and moves so greatly. I mean, if Norwich would have won here this afternoon, which they were for a lot of the game, they would be up to 9th and they'd be, I think, 5 points off the top 6. They've lost their 12th, and it feels all a bit mid-table. And, of course, and that is the way that fans and people look at the game, because ultimately it is the final version of Norwich. But at the moment, to me, on the context and on the caveat that as long as we're not staring over our shoulder particularly, I don't think we are with Norwich City this season. It feels a little bit, to me, kind of beyond point, because this is something that you have to turn, you have to change, and that means ultimately you get results like this. But and you can view it however you want, I guess, because, and I know there's been a lot of willingness to go back to 17-18, and that doesn't necessarily mean that what comes next for Norwich is an 18-19 campaign where they run away with the title. But the point is there, you have to put those building blocks in place, and that means that you are teaching players how to play a style of play, and with that, particularly young ones, comes inconsistencies, becomes errors, becomes afternoons in games where you don't create those structures, and you're doing that whilst teams stop you or are trying to stop you do that. So, excuse me, I think the next phase for Norwich is about achieving that consistency where they can play the way that they want to play for vast periods and consistent periods of time, and maybe are able now to add a level of steel into that just gets them over the line in games and can help them really pick up points. Because that is the element that's missing. It's the fact that 2, 3, 4, 5 players switched off from a free kick from range that they should have set up for, they should be set for, and they should read that there's 2 players there ready to go and close that down. And obviously the second one is a poor decision in possession from Sights and a real mess that came thereafter as well. So both of those things feel really basic, but I think are indicative of where Norwich City are. Which is mid-table, and that is where this team feels like it is, because it's so good in parts, it's pretty bad in parts, and that's probably what I was anticipating they would be this year, if I'm honest. And they need help in January. I think that's clear. You look at some of the options they brought off the bench today. I didn't really feel there was much to do in terms of changing the momentum and rhythm of the game. So, and you know, probably sums up where the squad is at really, which is a couple of windows short, and yeah, it's time, and that's the problem. So yeah, it's an afternoon I think that encapsulates where they're at, and hopefully in a year's time we're talking about an Norwich City team that, when they're in the type of position that this team is in today, can retain some of that control and retain some of those structures and retain some of the style that they want to play and did play in the first half here. They can do that consistently throughout the 90 minutes, because I don't believe that this is a team that's a million miles away from being quite a good championship team, but it's also a team that is incredibly infuriating, and that's unfortunately probably the nature of the way that this season is going to be, I suspect, and potentially even some of next, because of what they're trying to do here and how they're trying to change it. So, yeah, it's difficult, and that doesn't mean you accept defeats by no means at all, but it is with the recognition that actually it's for Norwich now. It's not about Sunderland away and putting all your eggs in the basket to win that game. It's about making sure that they are in a position in years to come to be able to incrementally improve, to incrementally get better, to work their way in the way, you know, Brentford were at this level, I think, for 7 years before they eventually got promoted. There was some playoff heartbreak in that, but there was improvement year on year on year. That's essentially where Norwich City need to strive to. And we're still at such an early stage of what they're trying to do and that evolution, that you get games like this where so much of it is good and you're tearing your hair out, you're walking away basically going, how on earth have they managed to lose that? So yeah, that's where we are in my view. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course, as well. Pinker.com, the place to go. Thank you very much for watching. We've got an offer on as well over there at the moment for subscriptions. Go and check that out. And we'll be back at Sunderland next week to see which Norwich City side we get there. And you know, hopefully it's one where it's going to be a difficult game, much like this one was. But hopefully it's one where Norwich City can at least show a performance, which I thought they did today. And probably we should be talking about a game that finish 1-1 rather than defeat. But hey ho, that's the way it goes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.